Welcome to Reclaimed, the podcast where women in midlife rethink ambition, reclaim their identity, and rise into their next chapter with clarity and intention. On today's episode, I'll be speaking with Jocelyn Sexton, VP of Marketing, and we'll be discussing personal branding. Welcome to Reclaimed. We are so excited today to have Jocelyn Sexton join us. On today's episode, we're talking about something every woman needs, but very few of us are ever taught: our personal brand. And whether we're creating this for a corporate job, our own business, or simply just for the purpose of how we express ourselves as we're out and about and interacting with people, this is really a critical component of how we show up as women. So I want to share a little bit about Jocelyn. She is the VP of Marketing at Growth Acceleration Partners here in Austin, Texas. She brings over 20 years of experience to the conversation today, working in a variety of industries, including government, automation, industrial engineering, software, fueling, consulting, and technology services. Jocelyn was named top 50 women leaders in Austin in 2023. She was also leader of the quarter by her company in 2025, alongside her team, which also received team of the quarter for that same period. And she received her MBA from the University of Texas, all while being a very busy mom. She had a toddler, a baby on the way. She was working full time and building and selling a house. One of the things that just made me think, wow, how exhausting all of this was. She had mentioned to me that she was in the midst of giving birth to her daughter between midterms and did not miss a day of classes. So super impressive resume, Jocelyn. And I think a lot of women that are listening can relate to just the chaos of life, especially as we're building careers and having babies and building families. So welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you. Hearing all the industries and all the things, it's like, oh gosh, that sounds like a lot. I don't, personal brain wise, like I don't always think about myself like that. So thank you for
Yeah.
summarizing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've had a chance to chat a little bit ahead of today and also this morning. I think your story is really powerful and what I've heard from you, just in terms of identity and ambition and how things can shift over time. You've built a career in a high-tech environment where, the expectations are very high. It's about moving faster, doing more, creating bigger things, and kind of how we approach our career probably shifts. I'm assuming for you, your thought process on where am I spending my time, where am I putting my ambition over that period of time changes and grows. But you'd made a comment that you approached your career the way many ambitious women do, by trying to prove you could do everything. And that is so relatable to me, and I'm sure a lot of other women. So I'd love to just start there, unpack that for me, share with us a little bit about what that meant for you when you say you had to do everything.
So thank you. So career wise, I had a big pivot or change when I decided to go back and get my MBA. I had done communications and PR work for 10 years or so before that, and had seen that other people were getting promoted and I wasn't, and I really wanted to be a people leader. So decided to go back to school, got my MBA, and especially at UT and these other top 20 schools, it's very expensive to do that. Good Lord, it's even more expensive now. And so I had to do everything, or I felt like I did. I had to prove it. My husband and I had spent so much money on this degree, and I needed to make money. I needed to pay off that debt. We had built our dream home while I was in school because we anticipated that a bigger salary was coming, but then you have a bigger mortgage. And trying to do all the things. I had a 4-year-old son, gave birth to my daughter in between midterms, my last semester. So I had a 3.5-month-old baby girl. And then I suddenly had a 3-hour commute back and forth every day. And trying to do all the things like you can, but you can't do all the things at the same time. And so I'm trying to do well at work and go above and beyond to prove that, I'm using this degree and it matters. And also giving attention to my family because I've been studying for the last 2 years. Like it's really hard. And so I've learned to be kind of honest with myself about what actually matters in any kind of given season of life or even in the moment of the day. Um, Back then, and this was all before COVID, I did have very kind of strict work life balance ideas in my head of between 6 and 8. I don't work. Like I don't open the computer. I do marketing. Like I'm not curing cancer. Like it's marketing. It's going to be okay. Um, COVID has stripped that away a little bit because now I find myself working at all hours of the day, but my kids are older and they need me less. You know, nobody's waiting on me to pour them a glass of milk or get them a snack. Like they're pretty self-sufficient. And I also so that was good for me, like work-life balance wise, you know, knowing there are seasons of life. When I think about those years, let's say from 2014 to 2020, when my kids were young, every time I look at photos of myself, I have so much happiness because my kids are little and they're so cute. And I think of all the fun things that we did, but I look exhausted. Like all the photos of me, like my smile is real and I remember how I felt in those moments, but oh, like my face just looks so tired in all
Yeah.
those photos. And so I think COVID was actually, I mean, COVID was terrible for a lot of people. We lost family members. Like I'm not saying that COVID was great, but it was very good for our family because it allowed me to start working from home. It allowed me to have more time with my kids because I wasn't on the road all the time. And it made me start thinking more about like what my values are, what really matters, like what am I trying to be intentional about and how I'm trying to spend my time. And I think kind of like reclaiming my ambition or what ambition means for me kind of meant shifting those priorities and being more intentional with the things that I do, and not just within my family and my friends but also helping other women. I've had some really good bosses, and the bosses have been good in a variety of ways, but I didn't always feel like I had a boss who was specifically helping me. And so I try to be purposeful with how I help others because I didn't have that and I know how hard it can be and it's it it's tough. Um, and it's where I want to put my energy. It means sometimes I'm saying yes to big opportunities or I'm saying no to other things. It's defining what enough looks like for me in this current season of life and being able to make decisions, but without the guilt or without the comparison. Especially when you get to, I hate that we're calling it middle age, but I guess that's what we are. Dang it! But
Yeah.
that when you're younger, everybody kind of seems like they're at the same level, and then we're 20 plus years in now, and some of us have very different looking careers or very different lives, and it's hard. They say comparison is the thief of joy, and I've never really bought into that because I think comparison can also be a good baseline for gratitude and just seeing, yes, she's doing that or this is what's happening there, but look at what I have. Like
Mhm.
I may not have this or that, but I have this and I'm so very grateful for this. And without that comparison sometimes you can lose you can lose sight of what you do have.
Yeah. I love that. You said so much in those statements that I think we can unpack and really hit the nail on the head in terms of our conversation today. One of the things that I want to pick up on is this concept of seasons of life, and also that you kind of were redefining along the way. Okay, it's that what I perceive what you're saying is that sort of just constant check-in with yourself of, as I'm going through life, I got to do a check in to say, okay, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Is this really what I want? And I think that also speaks to this concept we're going to talk about today around personal branding. So, a lot of what we have to do, I think specifically as women, and I'm going to say that very boldly, is you use the word intentional and deliberate. I think we do have to be very intentional and deliberate, but also an advocate for ourselves. So, in that concept you brought up around not necessarily having a boss that was sort of out for you specifically, when we don't have those, call them sponsors or mentors or advocates, whatever word we want to use, how do you be that for yourself? How do you create that confidence? How do you know enough about what you're bringing to the table to go be that self advocate? Whether it be specifically in your workplace, or maybe you're looking for a new job, or you're just looking for networking opportunities, or you want to get your foot in the door with a nonprofit or something, anything that may bring to the table.
Yeah, it's a good question. I watched a video recently and a girl was talking about how she feels like she was born with a delusional level of self-confidence. And I I liked that because I kind of have the same thing sometimes. I also was I was doing a presentation over South by Southwest.
Mhm.
And near the end, we were talking about women and careers. And I asked the audience, I was just like, who here is an eldest daughter? And several hands went up and there was like laughter in the audience because that's a thing. Like I am a classic type A, eldest daughter, Enneagram 3, recovering perfectionist, organizer, planner, high functioning overachiever, the former straight A kid. And for a long time and even still, I feel like my value is in being impressive or in being accomplished. And
Mhm.
so I was raised by parents who always told me that I was smart and that I was pretty, and I'm probably average at best, but I I do most of the time, walk into rooms with a pretty high delusional level of self-confidence, but that's not something you can teach. Like
Yeah.
I mean, you can try to teach it, but that's just my personality.
Yeah.
And so, with my team and as far as being intentional, it looks different things for different people. Sometimes it means giving people or leaders on on my team certain opportunities in things that they value in ways that they can be seen throughout different parts of the organization. Sometimes it means giving somebody a second chance. Like you can see the potential in them, but they're self-sabotaging it in some way, and having a conversation about, hey, this is what I see. This is what I feel really certain about. If this is what you want to do, I am here to help you. Like I'm happy always to be a mentor. And if you want my help, like I can help you. I can give you advice and the assessments or the observations that I'm making of how you can show up better or show up in the way you want to be. But I think a lot of it is just being honest, being authentic, asking people what they need. What I think they need may be different than what they think they need, and people are receptive in different ways. And so again, that intentionality kind of comes with just conversation and being honest and being open open to help. But also I never like how somebody may say, oh well, if you ever need anything, call me. I'm never going to do that. Like I don't like asking for help.
Yeah.
I would never be the person that's like, man, I'm having a really sad time, would you like to make dinner for me or break? Like no, like everybody offers that, like when somebody dies or something, but I'm never going to ask. I'm never going to do that. And so I think to be the person on the other side of that conversation, it's me being proactive to say, I would love to make you dinner. What are you doing on Tuesday? Can I bring you dinner? Or in the workplace, it's we have a meeting coming up. I would love you to give the presentation on this if you feel comfortable with it. I'll help you with the slides. We can practice together. I want you to feel confident and comfortable, and I don't want you to feel like I'm throwing this on you or voluntolding you. Um, but I think it's a good opportunity. If you're open to it, let's do this. Let's work on this together. And I think that is, I know it's appreciated, at least by the folks that I work with. And sometimes you just need that person who's a little bit pushy or, obsessive with helping others. And that's where I come in.
Yeah. That's incredible. I'm sure your team appreciates that. And just having the opportunity to be in the room. Sometimes that's just the greatest thing that you can do for someone is give them the chance to just sit in the room and
That's right.
observe. So you are acting in that way with your team. It sounds like you're being an advocate. For some of us that maybe don't have a boss like that, that is advocating or allowing us to have a seat at the table, bringing us into the, under the tent, so to speak, and
Right.
showing us what's what. I'm curious what your thoughts are around how we go about doing that, and just building upon what you said in terms of your confidence, right? A lot of us don't have that level of confidence, or this concept of imposter syndrome, or, oh
Right.
gosh, I'm really not as good as I think I am, or what if. And so, one of the things we had chatted about is, um, I think women in particular, we're in this place in the corporate world where if we are too bold, we're sort of labeled a certain way. If we're not bold enough, we're labeled another way. um, Advocacy in the workplace may look different. Sponsorship, we may not be. And I'll go back to your comments on motherhood and sort of doing it all. If I'm a mother and I'm building my career and I have babies at home and I have responsibilities, I'm going to paint a very broad brush, but a lot of the men that I have spoken to in the corporate world, um, they are they are not, that's not their main responsibility when they come home from work, right? They have oftentimes someone at home that's taking care of those things, enabling them to do the drinks after work, or the golf game, or the this or the that, or to stay late and talk in the hallway with the boss, right? I'm telling you, I was running out the door, and this was the days before we could work from home and we had flexibility. I mean, I was in the office 8 to 5 every single day, and I was running out the door every day to make it to daycare on time to pick my kids up before it closed. And I didn't want to be the very last mother, picking up my poor little 3 or 4 year old that's like the only one left there.
Yeah.
And I had days that I was the last mom, picking up my kids. But that can create a have and have not situation in the world of work. And if you don't have the type of boss that you're saying that you've wanted to become because of your personal experiences, you know how does that show up for us? How do we respond to that? I think part of it is we have to know our value and our worth, and that takes some self reflection and some work on ourselves. But raising our hands and sort of forging our way through some of just those things that are, and we can't, it's not about changing them, it's about operating within the environment we're in, and how do we best do that, and get the opportunities that might pass us by because we aren't always able, like you said, go to networking events, do things like that. Like, that just may not be reality for us.
And I think, I mean, sadly, I think that's true. Like, I wish I had some silver bullet or great advice, but I don't. I mean, I I feel like there was a period of time, even, I mean, I don't think anybody asked me this question as much now because my son is 16, my daughter's now 12. But for a long time, anytime I would be anywhere after 5 o'clock, but especially if I would be on a work trip of some kind, oh, who's watching your kids? And their dad. Like, or people would ask, like, is your mom in town to help? No, my husband's very capable. Like, I mean, yes, sometimes she came in, but I mean, nobody has ever asked if I'm babysitting my kids. And I can't tell you how many times my husband's been asked if he's babysitting or watching the kids, like
Mm-hmm.
some special thing that he does. And it's, I mean, I guess for some marriages and some families that is a special thing, but not mine. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we're pretty equal in that. But yeah, I mean, when the kids were little, I was, I had that long commute. So instead of doing one person does drop off and one person picks up, we split it to where he did my son and or our son, and I had our daughter. So I was doing drop off and pickup. And yeah, there were times where I was almost the last parent there, and there were a few mortifying times where I'm like, I am 2 minutes away. I promise I'm on my way. Like, because they were about to close. Like,
Yeah.
it's hard. And, you know, I don't want to say nobody gets that. Certainly women seem to get it, but it's all those little things that, the conversations in the hallway. Nobody's ever asked me to play golf. I don't know how to play golf, and maybe that's why, but nobody's even asked if I do. Like, I could be some like secret amazing golf player. Nobody's ever asked me to play.
Yeah.
And I know at some places where I'm worked, people were playing golf all the time, and that's where the promotions were happening. Not officially, of course, but I
Yes.
mean, and I worked with women too in particular who got their MBA and then realized I also need to learn how to play golf. And that's what made the biggest difference in their career, was not this wonderful expensive degree, but it was because not only could they play golf, but sometimes it's good to be like the token woman on the team, which is
Mhm.
also terrible and a whole different topic. Um, so, what to do, how to do it. I think in addition to having really high confidence, I also have very low levels of like mortification. So I embarrass myself all the time. I stick my foot in my mouth all the time. And it's at this point, that is part of my brand. Like, I am authentic. I treat CEOs just like I treat my team. Like, I don't necessarily treat people different because of their hierarchy in the company, for better or for worse. It has definitely not served me well in some situations, and I don't work at those places anymore. Like, that is what it is. I I think the only advice I would give is two part. One is keep trying. Your boss may not do it, but there are many other people in the company that
Mhm.
can and that will. And the more that you broaden your network within your company, I think it's always a good thing. I haven't seen situations where it's been bad. It hasn't ever been bad for me. Do people think of me how I want them to think of me? No, not always. Sometimes I'm still the girl in marketing who makes slides pretty, which is not what I want my brand to be, but at least they know who I am. Like,
Right.
you,
They know
you
your
gotta
name.
yeah, you got to take the good with the bad.
Yeah.
So I have been in some situations where I wasn't getting the mentorship or the advocacy that I wanted from my boss. So I went up a level and I made a point to spend a lot of time with her boss
Mhm.
and just other people throughout the organization, people who were peers, but people who also were directors and VPs. And I got really lucky, and that doesn't happen often, but I got really lucky. And the company that I was at Emerson, and they started a mentor program, like an official, this is our mentor pilot program. And my mentor for the quarter was our president. And that was amazing. And I ended up leaving Emerson in April, so like right after the quarter was ending. And when I told my boss that I had accepted a new job, he was just like, "Oh, congratulations, that's great." And that was all she said. Her boss was like, "Congratulations, we're so happy for you." The only person that said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, wait, why? Is there anything we can do? Anything we can say or do to get you to stay?" was the president of the company. And by then I had already told enough people, and I'm like, man, maybe I should have told you first. I don't know. But
Yeah.
so I do think that being open to have not necessarily relationships, but just trying to be involved with more people at the organization, I think that's always good.
Mhm.
And then the other half of that advice is don't be afraid to leave. I I do think it's harder as we get older. Nobody wants to, I mean, truthfully, nobody wants to hire like a 58-year-old. So at some point, I am going to have to probably stay places longer. But there was a while in my career where every 2 years or so, I was taking a new job. And each time, in a way, that helped me because not only did my salary normally go up, but then it was a new group of people that I could befriend. And I still tried to be friendly and just aware of and involved with people that I had at my previous job. So I have a pretty good network now because of having all those different jobs. So if you can't find what you need in one job,
Yeah.
maybe it's time to go somewhere else.
Yeah. I love that. You had mentioned just networking, right? And also potentially you go to a new place anytime you start a new job, it's an opportunity to rebrand or position yourself in a new way. So just kind of pivoting to this concept of branding and our personal brand and what we're bringing to the table. As you think about the environment you're in, does your personal brand change at all based on the environment that you're in? And what I mean by that is, for example, if you say, I don't know, part of my personal brand is I'm authentic, and you join a company and realize, ugh, my authenticity is not super valued here, does that mean that I need to change how I'm showing up and what I'm bringing to the table? Or does it mean that our personal brand is our personal brand, and that's how is it a decision we make, or is it a product of our environment? Maybe that's a better way to ask the question.
I think it can be both. And I think one thing that people confuse or misconstrue about personal brand is that a lot of times your personal brand is how others perceive you, not necessarily what you create. So I can say, I am queen of the world and my brand is, but I'm not. Like,
Mhm.
nobody thinks that. And so it's really difficult sometimes to say, work on your personal brand because it's defined by how others view you. I used to joke with my kids, like, I can say I'm a great mom, but they're the ones that get to decide that. Like, it's how they feel because they are the only two people in the world that call me mom. So I don't I think yes that you can and sometimes should make adjustments. I have worked in environments where it's very loosey, not loosey goosey, but like it's a very relaxed environment and it's okay to like joke around and be yourself and sometimes push the boundaries on what professionalism looks like, just like in a um, buttoned up kind of way. Like
Yeah.
you can wear jeans and you can be a little bit more casual. I worked in other environments where it's not like that, and so I don't think that my personal brand changes, but I do think the way I show up at work in those environments is going to be very different than how I show up when I have a lunch date with a old coworker. Like everybody has different um not necessarily different sides of their personality, but you can turn certain switches on or off. Like you're not going to the way that you act in church is probably not how you're going to act at happy hour with the girls, but you're still the same person. Like you can still, you know, you can still be the same person. It's not necessarily changing your brand. It's just knowing how things are perceived and if you're okay with that perception. So you may think, this is who I am and I'm not going to change. And if you're okay with how that's perceived with the people in your workplace, then more power to you. That's good. But if you have the self awareness to know, I probably shouldn't joke around with this person or in this meeting, like these really are serious people, and I need to be a serious person when I'm in this meeting. I don't think that's being fake. It's just you have to show up in different ways at different times. Like that's just being
Right.
an adult sometimes.
Right. Right. Um, so in terms of then defining that, so someone may be listening and thinking like, okay, so what do I do? What is my personal brand? What am I going to do with this? I've often thought of it as more of an aspirational statement to think about how do I want to be known? If I'm and typically it's been in the context of work, right? But sort of how do I want people to know me? And what is that aspirational definition? I want to be known as X kind of leader. I want to be known as X kind of colleague. So is that how you would define personal brand? Or if not, how would you define it for someone?
Yes, I agree with that. And I think that's a great way to frame it because again, it's putting the power on the perception that you have and then helping you think of ways to do those things or have that kind of behavior to make that happen. So, I used to, even still sometimes, I wish and I admire so strongly women who are like poised and polished and just perfect. Like their hair's always in place. They never laugh awkwardly during a presentation. They don't say, they are just classy to the hilt. I am not that person. I try, and then inevitably by the end of the presentation, I will have made a joke or something. Like that's not my brand, or at least that's what I thought. And then I was talking to my team probably about a year ago, and I had said something about that, like, man, I I wish I could be more polished, more poised, and I've noticed I'm doing it now. We were talking about it after a podcast interview that I had done. And I was just like, I have the hardest time looking at the camera because for me, the camera's right here, but your face is right
Yeah.
here. And I'm a people person. Like I like to look at your face.
Yeah.
And I also, there's not enough Botox in the world that can fix my face. Like I'm the worst, like I'm the worst at poker. Like you can just tell sometimes what I'm thinking or how I'm feeling. And all those things are kind of why I thought, man, I don't come across how I want to come across in this interview because I'm not looking at the camera. I, my mouth and my face are making funny faces. An old coworker of mine that we used to work with when we were both at Dover, one time he took screenshots of a video I had been in because every screenshot, my face is like, I'm just like, oh, I was trying to be so serious and, professional about this. And I looked
Yes.
grumpy.
Yeah.
And as and I think the big thing that I was telling my team was I want to look at the camera, but I think I should look at the camera, but I want to look at your face. And then also, as I'm thinking about things, I have a bad habit of like looking up or off because it's like I'm trying to look for things in the recesses of my brain to like
Hmm.
pull it out and speak it. And so then I spend half the interview like looking around or looking up or not looking at the camera. And I was saying, God, I wish I could fix this. I want to look like this. And my team was just like, Jay, you look great. Like nobody's even looking at you. They're listening to your words and
Yeah.
hearing your stories. And your hair does look perfect. You look great. Shut up. Like,
Yeah.
and so,
As
it,
I'm adjusting my hair here.
I know, right? Well, and I think the video stuff too, like I talked earlier about having self-confidence, but I don't know about you. I have never seen my face more in the last 6 years than I have in the 40 years before that
Hmm.
because we're on camera all the time.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it, it can either raise your confidence or it can make you very hypercritical or like self-aware in a negative way. So going back to the thing of like how to set your brand. I think what you said is really good. Like, how do I want to be perceived? How do I want to show up? How do I want others to talk about me? There's a
Hmm.
quote about something about a good mentor is not just somebody who like guides you and likes you, but they mention your name in rooms full of opportunity.
Yeah.
And then there's another saying about it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And so thinking about those phrases, I think, can be important for your brand too. If I want somebody to mention my name, in what scenario should they be thinking about me?
Yeah.
I don't want them to think my name when it's like, who can make me a pretty slide deck? That's not how I want to be known.
Right.
I want to be known if somebody says, we have a really tough problem. We need a really smart, critical thinker who can ask questions to help us make this better. Who's really good at punching holes in things and asking questions and doing things better than AI can right now about how to make this better.
Yeah.
Me. I want them to think of me.
Yeah.
So then it's like, well, how do I make that happen? What do I need to do to where I people think of me when they think of these scenarios.
Yeah. So it's not enough to just kind of say that this is what I want to be. You've got to also put thought on, okay, if this is who I want to be known as, what are those things that I need to be doing to create that perception? And I think the other thing you hit on is, you were sharing this with your team and getting some feedback from them. And so as we're thinking about our personal brand, knowing kind of that concept of, okay, how do I really want to show up to people? What's important to me? But getting feedback about how I am actually showing up to people is also, I think, really important piece of this, where, you know, I need to go get some external feedback. To your point, I think, my eyes look funny and my hair is a mess all the time, but then my team gives me feedback and says, no, you look great, you look polished. Actually, this is what we like about you. So then, okay, great. Maybe I discard that as some aspirational piece of what I'm trying to do, and I focus on the other things that, maybe I didn't think of as important. The other piece I want to hit on is, I just finished a program at UT called Women Who Mean Business, and it was a phenomenal program. I would suggest it to anybody. But part of what we talked about was executive presence. And so, as you're talking, some of the things you're saying come to mind as we discussed executive presence. And for women, I'm just going to speak to women because I'm a woman. I am not a man and don't know what men think. But how I show up is also, and my brand is my appearance.
Yeah.
And do I want to show up and, I work in a very pretty relaxed environment. But I also grew up in the world where I wore slacks and heels every day, and I was in the office 5 days a week. And as someone my age, it's been difficult, in all honesty, to find that balance between, I want to look my age, I want to look professional, I want to look ready for the role that I want next, but I also need to fit into the environment that I'm in. If I showed up in a suit every day, people would look at me funny, right? Because that's not the environment that I'm in. So I'm curious, when we think about personal brand and sort of how we're showing up, it's not about being pretty or not. It's about being polished, being put together, being clean, like those types of things, right? So how much does that play into how you think about your brand as well?
I think probably too much, like maybe an embarrassing amount. I don't know if I shared this story with you just in the past because we've been friends for a while. Um, One of the most impactful little moments of my career was when I was trying to get an internship. Have I already told you this story?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay.
So share.
So I was, I would have been 20 years old, and I was applying for internships, and I was applying at a company called EDS, which was one of Ross Perot's old companies. And I did the interview. I felt really good. Like the interaction, like the vibe just felt good. And the lady walks me downstairs. The interview's over. She walks me down to the lobby. And I said something like, I'm so excited to meet you. I can't wait to hear about next steps. And just, eager little 20-year-old Jocelyn. And she sighed real heavy, and she's just like, oh, honey, like you're not getting this job. And I was just like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What do you mean? And we're standing in the lobby of this like 30-story building, and she's just like, look around. Like, what do you see? How does everybody look? And everybody was wearing suits and stilettos and dressed very, very nice. This was in Dallas. And I was 20. I didn't own a suit. I was wearing like a, a pantsuit type thing, but it was sleeveless, so you could see my arms. And the shoes that I were wearing were like sandal type heels, so you could see my toes. And my hair does not look like this when I wake up in the morning. It has a lot of natural wave to it. And I don't think flat irons existed back then. Like we were still ironing our hair on a ironing. So my hair did not look super smooth. And I don't think that she did this motion of like, look at you, but
Yeah.
it was definitely what she was saying. And she was just like, my best advice to you is when you're going home, stop by the mall and get an application at Ann Taylor. Like you need a suit, you need pumps, like closed toed heels,
Hmm.
and you need to smooth your hair down. Like, and at the time, I mean, it was, I say I have a pretty low tolerance for mortification. Mortified. I could have
Oh,
just
sure.
sink as a puddle. It took everything I could to like just not cry on the spot, because at my core, I am a small town white trash girl. Like I didn't come from a lot. Like I was wearing my nicest outfit. Like that
Yeah.
was what I had. And to think that I was going to be limited in my career because how I looked sucked.
Yeah.
And and so I did. I on my way home, I stopped by the mall and I got a job at Ann Taylor, and I worked there for about 9 months. And I still have dresses and things that I bought from there 25 years ago. And part of me thinks she was wrong. Like, I should not be able to move ahead because I'm wearing the right suit or because I have smooth hair or whatever that
Right.
may be. But it does close some doors, or it does open some doors in some situations. And I found myself thinking about that years later as I'm hiring people, and then I see how people show up for interviews, and people will show up for interviews in t-shirts or like spaghetti strap tops. And maybe I'm old now, I don't know, but like when I see that, I'm like, oh, that's not appropriate. It's appropriate if you're like, again, going to happy hour or going to the
Right.
beach, but this is a job interview. Like, put
Yeah.
a real shirt on. And I hate saying that as a woman, because who cares? You should be able to wear what you want. But in the workplace, if you're only working with women who embrace that vibe, or people who embrace that
Yeah.
vibe, cool. Let me know where those jobs are, because most of the places where I work, like, and not always, like, I've worked at places where the marketing and the sales team are expected to dress one way, and even the guys, like, they're wearing polo shirts or
Mhm.
whatever, but then the engineers look like they haven't taken a bath in a few days and they're wearing shorts and flip-flops. Same
Yeah.
company, same building, but
Right.
the third floor dress is a little bit different than the fifth floor.
Yeah.
So
Or, your client facing role, you're in the legal field, you're in banking. I mean, banking is still fairly traditional, right? So to your point, you do need to know the environment you're walking into. And I would say if it's an interview situation and you don't know, err on the side of putting the suit on for the interview. Don't err on the side of, putting your casual stuff on, and coming in. I don't know. A lot of interviews now are over Zoom too, so I guess that changes things. But it's funny. I've seen recruiters actually put things in their emails that say you need to show up in this kind of dress for this interview, or
which
even
I
on
still
Zoom, right? Like,
appreciate.
and I thought, in a way it's good, but then another way I think you have to be explicitly told that. So, maybe the world I grew up in, I have a different perspective. I've just always assumed you show up in a suit for an interview. But yeah, it is challenging, and it may be different again depending on your team. If you're in front of clients, you're in a consulting role, you're in a sales role, you got to show up looking the part.
Yeah, and it's hard because I do think we are of a slightly different generation now, where, yeah, of course it makes sense to me, but the folks who are in their 20s, at least the folks that I work with in their 20s, some of them have only been in careers where it's okay to wear, I mean, I was going to say wear Crocs to work. I'm wearing Crocs right now. Um, Not necessarily that, but I mean, it's just,
More casual.
yeah, like when I moved to Austin, every day stiletto heels. Like, I could run, not that I run, but I could run in stiletto heels. I can't tell you the last time, other than like a wedding or something, where I wore 4-inch heels. Like,
Yeah.
so I do think it's different, but I do think, again, it's about how you want to be perceived. And the perception is, I'm a, I mean, I'm an Ann Taylor girl, I guess. Like,
Mhm.
the perception is the dress and how you look, and how you and again, I hate saying that, because I think that it's more on women. I think
Mhm.
men can look sloppy and overweight, and they're not judged for it, but women are.
Yeah.
And sometimes by other women. Like, I mean,
Oh,
as I'm saying
100%.
this, maybe it's me that's judgy, but I mean, I know it can go both ways. Either you're dressing too casually, or you're dressing too provocatively. It's not just the men, the women judge too, and that's hard.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I think women are tough critics on each other for
Yeah.
sure. So, what I've heard from you is, from a personal branding perspective, there's a few elements. One is kind of thinking aspirationally, what do I want to be? Who do I want to be perceived as? What kind of leader do I want to be? What kind of colleague do I want to be? What does this look like? And spending some time thinking about that, maybe documenting it, putting some thoughts together. I mean, we all have chat GPT these days that you could put a bunch of bullet points in and it can help you craft this statement, so to speak. But the
Yeah.
other piece is just the day to day. So things like how we speak, how we show up. Listening is another, I would say, personal branding topic, and that's probably a whole nother podcast. But sitting in meetings and being fully present, listening, being on, it's so difficult because we have so many distractions. I mean, cell phones, Teams, pings, emails coming through. People, if you're in the office, they're walking by, flagging you, like, are you on a call? That kind of
Right.
thing. It's difficult, but being present, I think, really important. And it also can help build your personal brand, so to speak. But and then also just how you're showing up, your dress, your attire, your professionalism. So if someone's thinking, oh my gosh, I've never done these things, this feels overwhelming, or maybe I just have had my head down for so long that I'm finally coming up for air, and I have to start again, and I don't even know where to begin.
Right.
How would you encourage, like, what would someone tangibly do? How would you encourage them to start documenting this? And then my second part of that question is, how do I use it?
Right.
So is it just a matter of knowing it in the back of my head and then showing up in those ways? Or am I going to take this statement and like read it to somebody, right? Or proclaim it out loud to people?
I
So
would if
two part question
you
for
do
you.
that. If you do that, I want to be there when you make your proclamation. So one thing I was thinking about earlier and then went off on a tangent and forgot. I think the critical feedback is important. Nobody likes it. Like I
Mhm.
even say, I don't I already know what I'm good at. So I don't need you to echo that for me. I need your critical feedback of where I can improve.
Yes.
When I read it or you tell it to me and I listen to it, it's going to be hard and it's going to break my soul a little bit because
Mhm.
I'm a people pleaser. I want people to like me.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of value when you can get really honest, critical feedback. And sometimes that comes from an annual performance review. Sometimes it comes from a conversation in somebody's office or over lunch or whatever.
Hmm.
A few years ago, my performance feedback was great. And, it was probably 6 pages long and 85% of it was just like, Jocelyn's wonderful, blah, 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 blah. My giant head got even bigger. But the only things that I focused on were the things that were the critical feedback, ways that I can improve part.
Hmm.
And I went through that document and highlighted in yellow, like, what are the slightly less wonderful things that people are saying? And one thing that showed up over and over for me in this one particular document in this one particular year was that one, that sometimes I am perceived as being defensive and
Hmm.
that I can be perceived as um, like not welcoming new ideas. And some people were very honest. They'll say, I am afraid to bring new ideas to Jocelyn because she's going to shut them down and say, yeah, we've tried that before. It didn't work. Or I will ask questions about the marketing plan and Jocelyn's very defensive about, why it is what it is and how the decisions were made. And as I read that, it was just like, oh, part of me was just like, that sucks. I don't want to be seen as defensive. Like,
Yeah.
but then the other part is like, yeah, I remember that day. Couldn't they remember all the other days where I was
Right.
awesome? And so I really have made a point to think about those two things when, and for better or for worse, again, this is like just my personality. The idea of brainstorming and it's like throw out all the ideas. No idea is a bad idea. Let's throw them all out. No, some ideas suck. I don't want to hear those. And so I have to like be intentional and think about it and just be like, you know what? No, all the ideas. Like
Yeah.
keep your face in check. Like let's hear all the ideas. And then with the defensive part, I get defensive because I'm passionate. I get
Mhm.
defensive because people ask stupid questions. Like nobody asks sales, hey, shouldn't you be selling something today? But marketing gets asked, or not even asked. marketing gets told what other people think marketing should be doing, because anybody can do marketing. Like, and that, yeah, that frustrates me. I did put time and energy and thought behind this process. And if you ask me something like, did you think about doing something on social media? Yeah, Bob, did you think about like, yes, yeah, I do get defensive. And so in this environment, I have to check myself.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means taking a breath before I talk. Sometimes it means like pinching myself, like putting my fingernail, to physically remind myself, nope, stay calm, don't be defensive, be
Yeah.
cool. And sometimes it means, okay, what I'm about to say may sound defensive and I don't want to come across that way, but I want to explain this to you. And just saying that of, I know how this is going to be perceived, but I want you to know that I'm trying to say it from a non-defensive place so that you can hear the context or the thought behind it. And
Right.
sometimes saying those phrases almost diffuses it a little bit and shows that you're self-aware and that, I don't want to be like this and it's
Yeah.
going to sound like I am, but here's why. I want you to understand the context, or I want to, you know, again, like tell you why I did or did not do this, but I don't want it to seem defensive. So if you're open to this conversation, cool. If not, yep, I heard your feedback. I'm good. Let's move on. Like we
Yeah.
just won't talk about it at all. Um, and so I think that's a key. Like the critical feedback is important. I love ChatGPT and Gemini. I'm super in love with Claude right now. ChatGPT specifically, I think does a bad job of making everything I do sound amazing.
Yes.
I'll give input and it's just like, that's a great idea. I don't need that. I need Gemini or Claude that's like, let's think about that a little bit differently.
Yeah.
People can be the same way. So having a trusted group of, this is what I want to say. Does this sound right? And I pulled up something earlier. So I've worked on personal branding stuff, even just kind of getting prepared for this. And the AI version of it is, I'm a B2B marketing leader who evolved from operator to architect. And now I'm focused on building efficient AI enabled marketing engines that drive enterprise growth. Cool. That hopefully sounds good, like in an email or on a
Mhm.
presentation, but I would never say those words in real life.
Yeah.
And so some of it is taking the big ideas of what you want to do, but then, okay, how can I put this into action? If I truly am saying I evolved from being an operator to an architect, then I need to make sure that I show people more of the strategy and the high level stuff that I want to be known for, rather than getting in the weeds about here's click rates and here's how many MQLs. Those facts that I'm sharing make me look like an operator. If I want to look like an architect, I need to talk differently.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of it, is figuring out who you want to be, how you want to be perceived, but then speaking that language, giving that type of information, I think will help frame your brand in the way that you want it to be, or at
Yeah.
least give you a better shot at being perceived that way.
Yeah. And I would say too, just to add on to that, if you see something or you know that you need to behave in a certain way or respond in a certain way, or like you said, being more strategic and speak more high level, if you're struggling to know how to do that, find someone that you know that does that well and say, "Can I spend some time with you? Can I learn I think people are more than willing to share knowledge if you ask them. I think people they like it. They like to share what they've learned. Oftentimes the problem is we just don't ask because we go back to like, oh, I don't want to bother them. Oh, they're too busy. I'm telling you, the last maybe 6 months or so, I've just gotten very bold and I've reached out to people with requests, similar types of things, with the mindset of what's the worst they can do? They can tell me no. I
Yeah.
don't have time. And then maybe I move on to someone else. But the fear sometimes is what is our worst enemy, of just like, let your guard down, admit you don't maybe know this, or you're not really good at it, or you're trying to get better at it. And I would love to hear from you and get some expertise from your experience, or how did you go about this? Or even just if you're preparing for this specific meeting and you're going to be in front of the executive team or the board, what are you thinking about? How do you think about what you're going to present and what's important to them? Because I just don't, I mean, we're not going to learn it by sitting in our jobs every day. We're not going to learn those things, right? We're going to have to go after them and be proactive. And that's part of, I think, that can also help you build your brand. Because if
Yeah.
you're known as someone who's like, I'm curious, I want to learn, I'm proactive in doing things, that also really helps people's perspective of you and how they think of you. So I think it all, I used to think of personal branding as this very finite thing, but I've now come to really see it as just such a much broader um, paintbrush of like how we show up every day. And to your point on the feedback stings. I don't care who you are, it stings. But I think if you are someone that is willing to be reflective, like you were, and say, okay, the reality is, this is probably true.
Right.
And so, do I want to do something about it, or do I want to discard the feedback? And then that's a choice you make. And that also might hinder
Right.
what
It
your
has
next move is.
consequences.
It has consequences on the choice that you make. Um, but it's coming from somewhere, right? And even if you think, well, that's just what they think, we've had perceptions reality, which is the purpose of this whole personal branding pursuit.
Yeah.
So,
One
any,
thing
oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, one thing I will add too. So I totally agree about, asking for help. I will say that there can be a fine line between being seen as somebody who's curious and somebody who's needy. And
Yes.
so I think that the solution to that is going back to what we said about, you know, if you need anything, let me know. Whenever you make that ask, I think it's really helpful to be as specific as possible.
Yes.
Because I have had people like, you know, can you tell me about how you became a leader? Geez, I mean, we've been talking for almost an hour. Like I can't. But
Yeah.
if somebody can say something very specific, like, I would like to know this, or I would like help this, or I would love to know how you think about this. I think the specificity of it makes it easier for people to say yes because it
Yes.
seems less daunting than just this open window of, can you help me?
Yes.
And and then it makes you seen as curious, as specific, as somebody who's really like trying to fine tune themselves or improve rather than she's a hot mess and needs lots of help.
Yes.
um,
Agree.
so I think the one thing I would add to that is just to be specific and mindful of what one thing, one topic do you want help with? And maybe it does turn into some kind of mentorship. You ask on this one topic, the conversation's great, and you end it with saying, this was really helpful. At some point in the future, I'd love to ask you about this. And you're setting yourself up for the next conversation.
Yes. Yes. 100% agree. And keep it finite. Like, can I get 30 minutes of your time, and then keep it to 30 minutes, right?
Yeah,
Don't take 45 or 60 minutes.
okay.
Well, Jocelyn, this has been fantastic. I think that, all the things that you shared with us will resonate with so many women. I really appreciate you being so vulnerable and willing to share your experiences, and even some of the feedback you've received with all of us. Any final thoughts, or anything think that you'd like to share out that we didn't cover before we um, say goodbye?
No, nothing specifically. I think it takes time. And I think something you said earlier too about sometimes we think about personal branding as being a very narrow thing, and it can actually be a very broad thing with lots of specific pieces of it. And so it can be really daunting to think, I'm going to work on my personal brand. Like, just take one thing at a time, and be intentional, be specific, and you build it over time. You build it with perception. It's not something you can do in 1 hour with ChatGPT. It takes effort and time. So I think part of it is just getting started and being intentional with how you do it.
Yeah, I love that. I love the getting started concept. And that way you actually make progress.
For
Well,
sure.
thank you again. This has been really fantastic. I know you are a very busy woman, so I really appreciate your time. And hopefully we can do it again sometime. Maybe we'll find another topic to talk about.
I would love to. Awesome.
All
Thank you
right.
so much, Lindsay.
All right.